Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Lights Out F1 Variable podcast. Thank you to everybody that listens to our first ever episode. Feels like ages ago now, where we predicted how we thought this season was going to go. If you haven't listened to it, make sure you go and have a listen to it after this one. I've got two of the team from that joining me. I've got Joshua Fletcher and Callum McAvoy with me. We're going to be looking back on the action that we saw in Bahrain, and then we're going to be we've got a couple of talking points from that. We're going to talk a little bit about track limits, talk about some of the things Formula One are doing to try and maybe enhance our viewing on the TV with some of their new graphics they're doing, and then we're going to have a look ahead to this weekend's action in Imola. First of all, Joshua, it's great to have Formula One back, isn't it? We had all this build-up, we had Drive to Survive. Then we had the first race, and then they just went, here's nothing for 3 weeks. It's great to be back, isn't it?
Yeah, completely. I think, especially if this is a sport you follow most closely, 3 weeks is a abnormally long gap between races. I've sort of been all right with the football being on, but definitely missed the racing action.
And Callum, how about you? Obviously, we're all in the UK. Lockdown restrictions have started to ease. Have you managed to fill your time without kind of any racing going on?
Yeah, well, I got a fresh trim on Monday, taking advantage of a lockdown ending here, which was great. It's been a weird 3 weeks. I think we were kind of spoilt last year, weren't we? That the season was so compacted into the last half of the year. We had a Grand Prix every week nearly. So to have a 3 week gap, I really didn't know what to do with myself for most of the time. But glad F1's back this weekend, especially since my team isn't playing football. So I've got something to do on Saturday and Sunday for a change. But looking forward to it.
And you mentioned the gap. I think the other thing is last year we were spoiled in terms of the fact that we had Formula 2 and Formula 3 and Formula 1, at every track and pretty much every weekend. So you were just constantly watching racing. This time we only had Formula 2. We had the new format as well in Formula 2, which I thought kind of worked quite well. But Formula 1 is what we're here to talk about. Obviously, last time out it was Bahrain nearly 3 weeks ago now, where we saw Nikita Mazepin crash out on the first lap. We also saw Alonso, Latifi and Gasly all retire, which I'm sure that they'll all be very disappointed with. Looking down the order, Sebastian Vettel really let me down. I predicted him to finish fifth in the standings. 15th place finish for him. George Russell 14th, fairly standard. The Alfa Romeo is doing not too bad, just finishing just outside the points in 11th and 12th. Looking further up the grid, we have Yuki Tsunoda, who finished 9th and pulled off some impressive overtakes on his first race. A disappointed Daniel Ricciardo in 7th for McLaren. The two Ferraris finishing fairly well in 6th and 8th. And then at the front, we had Lando Norris just missing out on a podium. Well, not really just missing out in terms of where he finished on the track, but in the standings, it looked like he just missed out with our usual Ham-Bot top three, but not in that order. It was Ham-Ver-Bot, Hamilton winning against Verstappen, which was a fantastic battle, and I'm sure we're going to get into that. And then Valtteri Bottas coming third. Most of what happened was pretty much in line with our predictions, apart from the retirements and maybe one or two that were out of position. Joshua, what was your main kind of talking point from Bahrain? What did you enjoy most about that race?
That Hamilton-Verstappen battle is, I think, what every racing fan has wanted for this season. And to kick it off in the way they did in race one was brilliant for a viewer. Not quite for Hamilton fans. I think, for me, I would have wanted him to win that race as he did. Dubious circumstances, I think it's fair to say. There was a lot of action, a lot of controversy, track limits, as you said, we'll get onto, but nervy last couple of laps for Lewis, but he brought it home, and deservedly so, I think, in the end.
And Callum, how did you feel watching it? Were you on a particular side, be like, oh, I really want Verstappen to get past him, or were you kind of like, nah, Lewis is going to see this out? How did you kind of see it in terms of the build up to when they actually kind of came together on the track?
It was pure joy for 90 minutes, really, because you just knew it was going to boil down to those last couple of laps. So I was on the edge of my seat for most of it. I mean, I tried to stay relatively unbiased when it comes to supporting a particular driver, but I was secretly willing Hamilton to hold on. And I think, as Josh said, it was rightfully so. Rightfully so. He held on to the lead. We'll get onto the whole track limits thing in a little bit, I think. But yeah, I think he did a great job again, and that's why he's a 7-time world champion and possibly going to be an 8th-time world champion by the end of the season.
And Joshua, I'm sure you were absolutely delighted to see Lewis hold on at the end there. How did you feel as a Hamilton fan, kind of watching that? Me and Callum, we're neutrals. We just wanted to see some excitement, and we definitely got that. But how was it as a Hamilton fan? Were you kind of biting your nails, or were you kind of expecting Verstappen to just go off in the distance?
As much as I wanted Lewis to do it, I don't think he shouldn't have won that race in terms of the tyres and the advantage that you sort of expected Verstappen to get. And it was great to see. It was nervy. It was, you looked at it, when was he going to get him? And he got him and then had to concede it. So, I mean, Hamilton drove well to defend it, won it by 700ths of a second. So it was almost too close to comfort, but he got the 25 points. So it's home and hose for that weekend. But if we see that battle every weekend right through to the end of the championship, no one will complain about this season, I don't think.
I have to say, I was a little bit surprised that the battle kind of happened on track. I was kind of expecting, we're going to see this. Verstappen's going to hunt him down. He'll get in DRS zone. He'll get him easily, down the main straight, and then he'll just go off into the distance. And it's a credit to Lewis to, how well he did to hold him off. Let's go to track limits then. Joshua, do you just want to talk us through kind of the rules that you're aware of and how it works in terms of the difference between track limits in qualifying and the difference between track limits in a race when you're in a battle and when you're not in a battle as well?
Yeah, I think, like most people, I think it's fairly confusing because you sort of see different things happen in qualifying and different things happen in the race, and where is a judge to have gained an advantage. And I think that's the really important thing. You saw Hamilton went off track quite a few times, but did it where he was under no threat of overtaking or being overtaken. So he didn't bring any danger to the track or didn't get an advantage by going off himself. And then you saw Verstappen did it, and he did it. He went off track a bit, fully off track, all four wheels, and gained an advantage. I think took the place over Hamilton by going off track. Is my understanding of it that you can't gain an advantage, and that's what Verstappen did and why he was told to concede or opted to concede, depending on whether you listen to his team or the FIA. In a very basic overview of it.
So, Callum, what's your take on it? Let's just get down to that first, because obviously we saw that Hamilton was out there, quite a lot during the race when he wasn't in that battle with Verstappen, and people are saying that gained in time during the lap, which surely is gaining an advantage as well, because all that time that he gains going out there when he's on his own is surely going to accumulate into, making him go faster around the track, surely. So what's your take on it, Callum? Should it just be the same for every session? You cannot cross that line, end of story. Or do you think that these race rules and qualifying rules should be in or out?
One rule for the whole weekend. I don't understand why we have to complicate it. I think that while the rules were correctly enforced during the race, and I've got no complaints about what Verstappen giving the place back, I thought it was odd that he gave it back straight away and didn't do the 5-second advantage. But again, I think this is the problem. The FIA have no consistency when it comes to what is a penalty and how do we enforce this penalty. If this was last season, Verstappen would have been allowed to drive away and then he'd have to get within or get, so Hamilton would have to stay within 5 seconds or whatever. But I don't know why they just keep changing the rules. It just needs to be one for the whole weekend. I'm not a big fan of the Formula One video games, but at least they're consistent with how penalties are given out. It actually gives you like warnings and black flags and whatnot if you go outside the lines too many times. So why can't we have a similar thing in Formula One in real life?
It's a very good point, because as much as it probably annoys you as well on the F1 game, you just put an inch, a little bit of a tire over the line. It's like warning, and the iconic Jeff from Team Radio is straight onto you as well. Let's not get ourselves caught up too much in the kind of virtual world. Joshua, the thing I wanted to ask you is, why do you think the FIA make themselves seem a little bit weak? Because the thing I seem to gather from it is they set out a rule at the start of the weekend that they send out these race directors notes and say, here's the line, don't go over it, or here's the curb, don't go over it. And then the drivers go out, drive the cars in practice, and you know what, they're obviously pushing them to the limit, and they're like, oh, but I can't keep it inside the line. Can we change the rules? Is kind of what I'm getting. And the drivers kind of seem to all pull together, and the FIA go, oh, okay, right, if you don't like it, we'll change the rules to benefit you. Why do the FIA just not say, no, these are the rules, you've got to, your part of your job is to get around the track as fast as possible. You've got to do that within the limits. Do you think the FIA may be a little bit weak in terms of the drivers, like I say, just go in and say, no, we don't like these limits? FIA go, okay, we'll change them.
The FIA seem to shoot themselves in the foot at every possible opportunity. And we've seen that historically. It's been covered in Drive to Survive. You've sort of seen that they say there's rules and then they don't implement them properly and don't give out the fairest penalties. And there's no consistency with the penalties either. I understand the argument that the FIA aren't the drivers themselves. If it was made up of a board of past drivers or something, and then they can understand what it's like to drive the track. But a lot of them are just senior officials and they employed by the company, and they don't necessarily understand. And that's why drivers appeal or do whatever their processes are. But I think, yeah, Callum's right. We need to have one set of rules for the whole weekend. You can't sort of change it for qualifying and have track limits deleted, sort of race times deleted for that lap or whatever it is. One set of rules, and there's clear consistency. And then the FIA don't come in for the slack they do, because they're offering every driver the same chance and penalising the same opportunity.
Yeah, I think we're kind of all in agreement that one set of rules, that's it. And I think these kind of safety car graphics that they do as well, that they show, where it kind of shows, right, the safety car goes way over the track limits just to exaggerate, what's right and what's wrong. And I think that's kind of show that to the drivers and say, stick to this, that's it for the weekend. And again, like you say, it prevents the FIA from shooting themselves in the foot by setting a rule, the drivers all complaining, and then them going and changing it. Let's move on to just a couple more talking points from Bahrain. The first one I want to talk about is Yuki Tsunoda. Obviously had a fantastic debut, finished in the points, something that we don't see very often from a rookie. Callum, he obviously made some moves on Fernando Alonso a couple of times. What did you make of Yuki Tsunoda's debut Grand Prix in Formula One?
Yeah, highly impressive. I don't know really what more there is to say. He's just incredibly quick. By the looks of it, very funny driver as well, from what I see of him on social media. So, yeah, looking forward to seeing more of him this season. It's just a shame he's in an AlphaTauri, because I think eventually, what's going to happen. He's going to get promoted to Red Bull, and then it's going to be a Verstappen v Tsunoda fight, and things are going to get ugly. I'd rather him be at another team personally. But no, for now, looking forward to seeing more of him.
That's a really interesting point, actually, because that Red Bull seat we've seen has broken more drivers than it's made, and it could really make or break. And I've never thought of it like that. So it's a good point, and it was good to see him out there. And I think, Joshua, the best thing about the weekend was him complaining about being sent out in traffic in I think it was the first practice session. It was good to see him just getting in there, getting involved, and taking the reins as he should do.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, I wasn't too aware of who he was necessarily and how he'd compete against the rest of the F1 field this year. But I think he's proved that he deserves to be in the sport. Again, I was a bit shocked that he got the seat, and he got the seat at a team like AlphaTauri. I know there's the Red Bull connections, but you look at maybe some of the drivers who didn't get a seat, who performed reasonably well last season. Hulkenberg, when he's come in when needed. I still think Albon was done a complete disservice by Christian Horner. So I mean, he's proved his worth. I know Gasly had a technical fault, but he's outdriven his experienced teammate in the first race, and some of those moves he made and those overtakes for a rookie, for someone so young, was, I mean, quite impressive.
And the last team I want to talk about before we move on to kind of a couple more things that we're going to chat about and this weekend is Alpine. They seem to, Fernando Alonso has come out this week in the press conferences and said, we did a good job, although they're now 8th in the standings. Ocon finished 13th. Alonso had to retire. Are we going to expect more of this from Alpine, Callum? Because I have to say, all three of us predicted them to be maybe a little bit better than they did in the first race.
I mean, I had Alonso, I think, fifth in my drivers' predictions, so I'm rather hoping that they do improve. I think it's just one weekend, Before Alonso's retirement, he was looking pretty quick, and I think all the commentary kept saying, "Oh, it's like Fernando Alonso's never been away. He's just as quick as he was before." So I think it's just one weekend, If the reliability of the car does improve, which it should in theory, then they should be okay, I think, for the rest of the season. Ocon, I'm not so sure about, but Alonso's definitely good.
Okay, so like we say, Bahrain, fantastic first opening race, really kind of has set the bar high for the rest of this season. And we like I said 100 times already, we are going to come on to this weekend. I think everybody was kind of where we expected them to be, apart from Alpine. We obviously had Haas and Williams towards the back, Alfa Romeo just ahead of them, Aston Martin, Alfa Tauri, Ferrari, McLaren, Red Bull, Mercedes, all kind of in the right sort of order in terms of where we predicted them. The next thing I want to talk about is these new graphics which Formula One seem to be implementing into the TV coverage that are supposed to make it so much better and so much easier to understand for not a neutral, but a newcomer that's never seen Formula One, or somebody that wants to get into it and know a bit more about it. Just looking at the Autosport website at the minute, they've kind of detailed what these kind of graphics are. The first one we've got is this kind of these braking points, showing where each driver is braking and then where they're starting to accelerate through corners. And Joshua, the question I've got for you is, what does this add to our viewing? Why do we need to? Who cares about when a driver is braking and accelerating through a corner? Why is that relevant?
I think, first of all, I don't understand the point of implementing them at different races across the season and partway through a season. If you're planning on adding new graphics, tell us what they are at the start of the season, explain them, have them in from start to finish. And they're sort of doing it at different stages of the calendar is all a bit weird. The breaking points one's interesting. We sort of know how much Daniel Ricciardo's hyped up about King of the Late Breakers. It'll be interesting to see how that compared to other drivers who do better than him in the race. Does he gain so much of an advantage in his overtakes? But I think it's more for the experienced fan and those who know what it means. I think coming into that your first race and sort of being told, "Oh, this is where XYZ driver's braking," like, why do I care? What do I mean? So I get what you mean. It's a strange thing. It's probably just money and sponsorships with Amazon, to be honest, or AWS.
And this, some of them I can understand, this kind of striking distance thing of, because the commentators, Martin Brundle especially, seems to be very good at breaking down the rules for the beginner. When Sergio Perez had that, when he pulled over on the formation lap, and Martin Brundle was making the rules very clear, he's got to go into the pit lane, he's got to start from there. And I think Brundle is very good at doing that, and with the safety cars, all that sort of stuff. The striking distance thing I can kind of make sense of, if he's, both drivers are on different states of tires and that sort of stuff. I can kind of see where that comes from. But things like tire performance, when Lewis Hamilton has got a 70% next to his, both of his front wheels, Callum, why is that there? Why should we know that? Why are we not just kind of told this sort of stuff? Why do we need a graphic to show us it?
Why indeed do we need a graphic? Right. Especially when the graphics, for the most part, don't really work. I remember last year, I think, at the Japanese Grand Prix, it had like the tire degradation stat, and it had something like, "Oh, Lewis Hamilton's tires are at 20%. The very next lap, he set the fastest lap of the whole race." So it was like, "Oh, that can't be true." So, I mean, first off, if you're going to have these graphics, make them accurate, please, AWS. But look, I'm not a massive fan of them. I think a couple of them work, but they're trying to implement too many now. But I think if you are going to have these stats, have them in the practice sessions maybe, because that's when they're most relevant, I think. So there are fans out there who will want to properly analyze the whole weekend and how each car and each driver are performing. So have them in the practice sessions, but in the race, let's just enjoy the spectacle rather than look at some graphics all the time, I think.
I agree, and I think you make a good point with the practice sessions there, because I remember Sky F1 last year. I think there was 2 race weekends where they had Nico Rosberg working for them, and Nico Rosberg let's be fair, is the only person that has driven a Formula One car in the Sky F1 team in this kind of era that we're in, this hybrid era, and he's the only one that kind of knows how to drive these cars. Okay, Kareem Chandok's gone and done like features, and Martin Brundle and all the other pundits, but Rosberg knows what it's like to be in these cars. And you know, if the graphics then pop up and Rosberg's giving us that insight, which I think he's very good at and is much better at than the likes of Paul di Resta, and kind of some of the other more recent ones. I think maybe you're right. It could definitely work then. Let's just have a look at these graphics that are being expected to be rolled out. The first one is car exploitation. From the Canadian Grand Prix, the graphic will show when drivers are pushing their cars to the performance limits of grip, braking, acceleration, and cornering during a race. Josh, why should we know when a car is on the limit? Surely we should be able to see that from maybe, you know, a bit of a wobble out of a corner or a snap of understeer or oversteer. Why do we need to be told this, you know, through a graphic? I don't get it.
I think first of all, that's something that we can see as fans through we see it on Sky, the Sky angles show it. The commentators make a note of that. They let the audience know that, oh, someone's gone wide at turn 3. He's gone off the track. It looks like the tire. You can see the tires going. Sort of,
yeah.
Silverstone last year, you saw Hamilton going, you saw Perez going, and then degrading. I don't think we need the graphic to show us every sort of part of the car that's performing well or badly or how it's deteriorating. That's the baffling one. I cannot understand trying to fit everything into one tiny graphic for 20 drivers. And Callum's right, they're delayed and they're not accurate. When you make them, that's you never know what's going to happen in that 10 seconds that it takes from making it to getting it up on screen. Someone can go crash out and then it's completely invalid. It's a very strange one.
I'll just go through the other ones because I think there's probably only one here which I can see making a difference. The next one is energy usage. From the British Grand Prix, this will explore when the drivers are using their battery power and how much they have left in reserve. Well, again, surely we're showing this with the flashing red lights at the back when they're, you know, charging up the battery. Why do we need a graphic to see that? The other one is start analysis from the Italian Grand Prix. This will compare the getaways of each driver, both in terms of reaction and distance gained on grid rivals. Again, lights go out. We can see who gets away quickly. We can see who makes the overtakes. We can see who's at the first corner first. Why do we need a graphic to tell us? The only one that I can kind of make sense of, Callum, is this pit lane performance one. From the Japanese Grand Prix, this will look at the time lost or gained in a pit stop outside of the moments when a car is stationary. This one I can kind of make sense of, but surely, I know it says outside of when a car is stationary, surely we can see when time is being lost, when a car is blocked by another one coming out, or, you know, somebody cuts something up. So what do you make of this pit lane performance graphic?
Sounds like a load of rubbish to me, to be honest, from the way you described it there. So hang on, this is measuring, aside from when the car is stationary, which is only a matter of seconds usually anyway, it's measuring how long it takes them to get into the pit lane and out again. Is that correct?
For the Japanese Grand Prix, this will look at the time lost or gained in the pit stop outside of the moments when the car is stationary, which is surely when the pit stop is.
Yeah, but when you go into the pit lane, you have to press a button on the steering wheel that slows the car down to, like, I think it's like 50 or 40 miles an hour. They can't exceed that. So this graphic is basically a bit pointless from what I'm understanding. Like, what is the point of this? I'm a bit lost for words here.
And the final one is an undercut threat from the Australian Grand Prix, which, by the way, is right towards the end of the season. This will analyse the potential benefits that a driver could have by making an early stop to undercut a rival ahead of him. But again, surely we can just see this in the lap time. Surely we can see this in when they stop and things like that. Are Formula One just completely wasting their money here, Joshua? Do you think that this is just a way to, well, they're probably not wasting their money because they're probably being paid to use these graphics?
Yeah, then I can only assume that there's a sponsorship thing with Formula One and AWS and all their sponsors, that they want more information and they need to convey that to their audience. Maybe who want this. I know we can't speak for everyone. Maybe there's loads of people that want to see every aspect of every driver's performance. It has to come down to the sponsorship thing for me, though. I can't imagine Sky are batting out there for more graphics. It takes away from their coverage. It's a bit weird. And to spread them out, what's the point in having a graphic 4 races from the end of the season or whenever Australia comes across. And then what are you going to add more in at different stages next season? It's too much for me. Just let's enjoy the racing.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, there's been a hero. Somebody's come out and said, yeah, this is the best thing ever. And that's the F1 chief engineer, Rob Smedley. I want to get your thoughts on what he said, Callum. He said, with this new set of racing statistics for 2021, we are going deeper than ever before. New insights like braking performance and undercut threat peel back the additional layers of race strategies and performance and use advanced visualizations to make the sport of racing even more understandable and exciting. Is that just loads of waffle to make Formula One look good, Callum?
Yes, is the short answer. Look, these graphics, these stats will be, someone out there will love them. And you know, if it does bring more fans in and make the sport more understandable, then all the power to it. I'll take back everything I've said, but I don't see it working personally.
I think the commentators do a good enough job. Like I said, especially Brundle. I mean, Crofty seems to be this stat king, giving us, you know, these really unnecessary stats. This is the first ever Grand Prix in Bahrain in February on a Sunday, you know, for 20 years or whatever. And we seem to get these kind of really weird stats from him. But Brundle especially seems to be very good at kind of breaking things down for the viewer, telling them about strategy and stuff like that. And I don't think we kind of need these, maybe, as Josh said, out-of-date graphics, you know, that could change at any moment. Let's move on then. We've obviously finally got some racing to look forward to this weekend. The Formula One cars take to the iconic, legendary circuit, which is Imola. Joshua, before we get into it, a fast-flowing circuit, not much opportunity for overtaking. How important, especially considering it could be in the wet as well, is qualifying going to be on Saturday afternoon?
Vital. I think you sort of know drivers who perform well in the wet. You look at Lewis, and if he gets a good position in qualifying, it's almost as if, almost like Monaco, that you need to get such a good pace because, like you said, not much opportunity for overtaking. Weather definitely comes and plays a part in it. The higher up you are, the better chance you have at winning, especially in the rain, especially with a circuit like Imola. Qualifying is vital. I think maybe we could see some surprises. Maybe there'll be a couple of drivers up there who perform well in the wet, get a good chance, do well in qualifying, knowing that the wet weather might come, and put them in good stead for a podium. And I don't know, maybe there'll be a shock to the normal order. Let's hope so.
Well, I think the main thing we've got to hope is that nobody crashes under the safety car this time out. Cough, cough, Mr. George Russell. So yeah, a wet weekend. It's going to be a lot colder. Callum, how do you think that's going to impact the performance of these cars? Do you think we're going to see a fairly similar order to what we saw in Bahrain? Or do you think that maybe some of these cars may act differently to the conditions, which are obviously going to be a polar opposite to Bahrain, whether it's raining or not?
Well, to use a cliche, rain is the great leveler in motorsport, isn't it? You know, it doesn't matter how good a car you've got. If you can't drive in the rain, you're screwed. So I'm praying for rain because, as mentioned before, Imola is a bit like Monaco in the sense that it's a historic track. All the drivers love driving around it, but as a spectacle, it's not particularly great. So, yeah, I think even if we don't get rain, I think there'll be a couple of changes in the order because we're going to see less overtaking. So we'll be about those who qualify first. Will near the front of the grid will obviously perform better. But yeah, let's pray for rain and then we'll have a completely messed up order, hopefully.
I think if it's raining, I'm going to regret missing Sunday's race. And if it's not raining, I'm probably going to be like, yeah, I'm not really that bothered. You know, I'm out refereeing on Sunday afternoon. All my games kick off conveniently on a Sunday afternoon at 2:00. So I kind of have to stick to the highlights package that Sky show in the evening. So I think if it's raining when I leave the house, I'm probably going to be like, yeah, a bit annoyed that I'm missing this one. But if it's not raining, I'm probably going to be missing a procession. I think we could probably all agree on that. Let's talk about what we think is going to happen this weekend then in terms of our podiums. We'll start off with, before we get to that, Joshua, do you think we're going to see many shocks in qualifying? We're going to see like a Williams doing fairly well in Q2, or we're going to see maybe an AlphaTauri up in Q3. Any kind of predictions for qualifying? I've kind of thrown you on the spot a bit for that one.
I mean, I don't think it could get much worse for Aston Martin than it did with the drivers that came out. I think Vettel came second last, was lapped. They have to do better this weekend. Maybe a Ferrari up there, sort of Italy. It's not necessarily home race, but Ferrari fans, Ferrari drivers will want to perform well this weekend. Maybe one of those two in the top three, but Lewis and Max should be 1 and 2. Unless a complete disaster for those two teams.
And then Callum, any other kind of shocks that you're expecting to see in qualifying? Anybody that's going to, get into a session they probably shouldn't be in, or even the other way around? Maybe Sergio Perez could crash out in Q1 and not make it through and start in the bottom 5. Anything kind of for qualifying that you're expecting to see?
I think he got out of Q1 last time, but I'll say George Russell will probably get out of Q1 again, which would, I don't know if that's a big surprise anymore. I think he has improved a lot this year, but I'll say he'll get into Q2 again. Why not?
Cool. And then on to Sunday afternoon. Myself, I'm predicting a good afternoon for Red Bull. I'm going with Sergio Perez to get his first podium in a Red Bull. I'm also going for Lewis Hamilton in second, and I think we're going to see a Max Verstappen win on Sunday afternoon. Whether or not that's from pole or not, I'm not quite sure. I think the order below that could be a little bit jumbled up. I think Valtteri Bottas could end up in 9th or something because he's at the wrong end of the circuit when it starts raining, maybe. Or I'm kind of being optimistic a little bit here. But my podium, I've gone for Verstappen to win the race, Lewis Hamilton second, and I think Perez third. I think we're going to see an even stronger Red Bull than last time in terms of Perez performance, and Verstappen as well, who will go one better than he did in Bahrain. Callum, how do you see the top 3 finishing on Sunday afternoon?
I've been boring with my top 2. Lewis Hamilton to win, Max Verstappen to be second. Max might get pole, as you say, but especially if there's rain, I think Hamilton is the rain master of the current grid. So I think he'll take the victory in Imola. For third place, I'm going to be a bit wild and say Fernando Alonso will get a podium for Alpine. I think Ricciardo in the Renault last year got a podium at Imola, if memory serves. So I think obviously if the Alpine car is as strong as that Renault from last year, then I think they're in good stead. And then again, if there's rain, who knows, maybe Alonso surges up the grid to third place. So
it would certainly be a perfect story, wouldn't it, for Fernando Alonso to come back, an iconic circuit, a veteran, legendary driver in the sport. It'd be fantastic for him to come and get a podium with Alpine in his only second race for them as well, considering he retired last time out. Joshua, are you the same? Have you got a pretty standard top 2 and gone for a wild third, or have you just completely put, have you made my wish come true of putting Antonio Giovinazzi on the podium this weekend?
Again, it's so hard to do a blind reaction without knowing what everything looks like from Friday. Again, assuming it rains, Hamilton to win, but again, not by much. It could be anything between him and Max. I've put Charles Leclerc in third as a blind reaction just because I think it's really important for Ferrari to impress. I know it's not the greatest car they've had in recent years. But again, it can't be worse than their performance last year in those Italian Grand Prix. And the Tifosi will be desperate for a positive result. And I think Charles might bring them some happiness this season, whether this be as good as or as bad as we've seen them last year. It has to change at some point.
Excellent. So we did some wild predictions for kind of the whole season. We've got a couple that we're all going to give as well for Sunday afternoon. I've gone for my mate Sebastian Vettel to get himself into the points, maybe kind of 4th, 5th, something like that. And I've also got maybe Yuki Tsunoda challenging for a podium. I don't think, as I said in my podium prediction, I don't think he'll get on the podium, But I wouldn't be surprised if maybe, like you said, with the rain, the order shuffled up a little bit, and maybe we see Yuki challenging for a podium. Callum, let's have some of your wild predictions. What could happen on Sunday afternoon that's kind of unlikely?
Well, similar to you, Matt, I think Aston Martin are due a good weekend here. So I have Lance Stroll to finish in the top 5. I think he'll push for a podium. He was quite good in the rain last year, especially the Turkish Grand Prix. So I think he'll be in the top 5. I've changed my second wild prediction just now. I'm going to say Nikita Mazepin will finish the race. Not score points. I think he'll finish the race.
That's fair enough, and I think you could say a little bit harsh, Crofty, giving him that Nikita Mazepin name as that kind of went round trending on Twitter after the race, didn't it? Joshua, anything else from you? What are you thinking for Sunday afternoon in terms of your wild predictions?
Again, this is more of a wishful thinking, perhaps, but it's wild as well. I think George will score a point. I think he'll get top 10, hopefully. And I think that Pierre Gasly will disappoint. I'm not saying he'll crash out. I'm not saying but I think he won't meet expectations.
Fair enough. Well, that's pretty much everything that we've got for you today. Some interesting predictions in there. Mazepin finishing a race is definitely optimistic. Mazepin being able to drive a car is just about being able to push the boat out a little bit. So yeah, some really good stuff there. Some really good discussions. We'll be back after Imola, obviously. I don't know why I paused there. Looking ahead to Portimao, which obviously gave us some entertainment last time we were there in 2020. So hopefully we get more entertainment to look forward to there. So yeah, join us next time. Thank you very much to everybody who has listened along. If you've got any thoughts, any questions, we want to interact with you guys, send them in and we'll get through them in the next episode. Make sure you're following us on Twitter as well. It's at F1 Babel. Josh is going to tell me if that's wrong. I don't think it is. It's at F1 Babel, isn't it?
I think you're right. Yeah, all the links will be in the description. Yeah, it is at F1 Babel, but link will be everywhere you can find it.
Wonderful. So yeah, but make sure to give us a follow on there. As well, we're obviously on Babel.com. We'll have the whole team doing kind of practice reports, race reports, quality reports, talking points, everything around this weekend will be on Babel.com. And if you scroll down to the motorsports section, that's where you will find all of our content. So like I said, thank you very much to everybody for listening. Thank you to Joshua and Callum for your time as well coming on this evening. We'll be back, like I said, on the Friday before Portugal. So hopefully we get some decent racing to talk about, and hopefully we don't get to talk about some terrible graphics which just haven't worked, and maybe even Antonio Giovinazzi podium, who knows. Cool. So that's it. I'm going to stop rambling on now. Like I said, thanks everyone for listening. If you're on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit that notification bell, the like button, all that sort of good stuff that sets off the YouTube algorithm. If you enjoyed the podcast, tell your mate, tell them to tell a mate. Let's get as many people joining us as possible. And if you're listening to us on a podcast platform, leave us a 5-star review, all that good stuff, and follow and subscribe to us on there. So yeah, that's it from us. Let's hope it's a good weekend of racing. Thank you very much to everybody for listening, and we'll see you all after Italy. Bye bye.
See you later.
Yeah.